Good evening, everyone. This is a call to order for the Wilmette Public Library District Board of Trustees, our regular meeting for Tuesday, July 16th, 2024. The time is now 6:30, and the meeting will begin. Secretary DiLorenzo, may we have a roll call, please?
Yes. Trustee Cox?
Here.
Trustee DiLorenzo is present. Trustee O'Keefe?
Here.
Trustee Senate?
Here.
Trustee Fishman?
Here.
And Trustee Nealon and Trustee Summer are not present.
Thank you. Our first order of business is to review and approval of the draft minutes of the June 18th, 2024 regular board meeting. Do I have a motion to approve?
I move approval of the June 18th, 2024 regular board meeting minutes as corrected.
Thank you. Trustee O'Keefe has motioned approval with corrections. Is there a second?
I second.
And that was, I'm sorry, that was Senate. Thank you, Trustee Senate. All right.
There's
Trustee
one minor
O'Keefe.
error. If you look under Section 5, Treasurer's Report B, Bills and Salaries Check, when there's the listing of the various votes on the motion, absent or not voting should read DiLorenzo, not Senate. There's just one tiny little error. So that will be corrected, and then we can move forward.
Very good. Thank you very much. Secretary DiLorenzo, may we have a roll call, please?
Yes. Trustee Cox?
Yes.
Trustee DiLorenzo, yes. Trustee O'Keefe?
Yes?
Trustee Senate?
Yes.
Trustee Fishman?
Yes. Thank you. Motion carried to approve the June 18th, 2024 regular board meeting minutes as corrected. Thank you. At this time, meeting attendees who have signed the visitor public comment registration form and who wish to address the Board of Trustees may do so here. Is there anyone? All right. No one this evening. Thank you. Moving on to our agenda, there is no presentations. And now we'll move on to the Treasurer's Report. Trustee O'Keefe will present in Trustee Treasurer Summers' absence.
Yes.
Thank you.
So I was given these notes from Trustee Summer, and I'd like to read them as follows. If you have any questions, certainly you may ask me. I'll answer to the best of my ability, or if there's any questions or comments, we certainly can address them later or at next meeting. Treasurer's presentation for July 16th, 2024. There was a general fund CD that matured right at the end of the month, and this was not captured in the CD spreadsheet. This will be updated in next month's report. We reinvested a 3.15% two-year CD with a 5.1% two-year CD. Treasurer Summer also noted that Director Austin previously reported that the library was projecting fiscal year 23-24 expenses would be about 98% of the approved budget. The fiscal year 2023-2024 budget included a general fund deficit spending of $537,182, which would result in estimated deficit spending of $370,000 at the year end of June 30th, 2024. However, if you review the profit and loss statement, GF only, general fund only, at the bottom, the net loss for the general fund for the year is actually $24,087. So a difference. Also, for all funds, the library has a net income of $48,000. Director Austin's estimate was calculated by taking the total over/under budget amount of the expenses only of $159,000. So if you look at the bottom of the general fund, only profit and loss statement, and then you subtract this from the budgeted deficit of $537,000, this totals approximately $378,000 in deficit. This calculation did not consider the income items that came in higher that were budgeted for. Specifically, interest income was $163,000 higher than budgeted, and taxes collected was $195,000 higher than budgeted. Income from CDs, as well as from the MacSafe accounts, are the reason for the interest in income this year. All things considered, this is very good news, as it means there was essentially very little deficit spending for the general fund, and will have a long-term positive effect and positive impact when Andrew Kim does our financial projections in the fall. And that's Treasurer Summers' report.
Thank you. Good news. Thank you. Any questions, any discussion?
Great job on the investment strategy.
Kudos, yeah. Well, I think everyone can see what the stock market has been doing, what has been very good returns, and we've benefited from this also. So, but thank you for you and Sandra now reviewing our accounts. Thank you.
So very, very positive. Thank you so much.
Great. Thank you.
Thank you.
Is there a motion? Oh, now we have the bills and salaries.
Yes.
Go ahead.
So I don't have any other information as to the bills and salaries from Treasurer Summer, but any questions or comments, or I did not have any at this time.
Anyone else? I did not. Okay, thank you. Then we'll move along. Is there a motion to approve the bills and salaries check detail for June 2024?
I move approval of the bills and salaries check detail for June 2024 as presented.
I second.
Thank you. Trustee O'Keefe has motioned approval, and that was Trustee DiLorenzo. Thank you. Has seconded the motion to approve the bills and salaries check detail for June 2024. Any other discussion? I'll make one last call.
No discussion needed.
Thank you. Okay. Secretary DiLorenzo, may we have a roll call, please?
Yes. Trustee Cox?
Yes?
Trustee DiLorenzo, yes. Trustee O'Keefe?
Yes?
Trustee Senate?
Yes.
Trustee Fishman?
Yes. Thank you. Motion carried to approve the bills and salaries check detail for June 2024 as presented. Now we'll move on to our action items, and this, I believe, we will have some discussion from Director Austin.
Okay,
Thank
you. So the action item on our agenda this evening is the review of Ordinance 2024-25-212, the annual budget and appropriation ordinance for library purposes for fiscal year 24-25 in tentative form. The final ordinance is on August 20th, 2024, our regular meeting agenda as an action item for review and approval. We will be advertising in Thursday's edition of Wilmette Life for the public hearing that we'll hold in advance of the budget and appropriation ordinance review that evening. And the document that you have in your packet includes an overview as well as some background material about what the purpose of this ordinance is. This is a procedural step for the library. And is an annual procedure for us. And there's, as I said, there's some information in the packet about this. I'm not going to review all of that verbatim, but I'll give you a brief overview. And there's a couple details that I want to discuss with you as well that we will be updating ahead of that review in August. So the ordinance is the second step in the library's annual budget process following the approval of our fiscal year 24-25 budget at the June 18th regular meeting. And it precedes the annual levy ordinance that we'll be reviewing this fall, likely for approval in November. Additional information about the financial procedures and records of past board action and documents are posted on our website. We have a web page that's dedicated towards our financial information. That's our budget and finance page, and you will find that on our web page under About Us. We also have more information, as I alluded to, in the packet this evening, and you can find that information on the board page on our website. So very briefly stated, the appropriation ordinance establishes the legal authority for the library district to expend the funds for the purposes that are designated in this ordinance. And the methodology and calculations that are included in this document are explained in the packet, and I'm happy to explore those details with you if you'd like a little bit more information. The things that I did want to discuss with you this evening relate to three categories, and one of those is on the spreadsheet portion of the document, which is page 2 of the document. So there are 2 narrative sections, pages 1 and 4, and then there are 2 spreadsheet tables, and those are on pages 2 and 3. So I want to draw your attention to page 2 of the ordinance itself. And at the very top of the document, it establishes our fund balances as estimated on July 1st, 2024. And the numbers that you see listed there historically and in this iteration of the tentative ordinance have been placed from the last audit that we received. And the last audit for fiscal year 23-24 was presented at our October meeting in 23. So the data that's historically presented on this document is already kind of stale by the time we review it, but that has been our methodology in years past. Last year, when we went through this process together, we all agreed that we would like to see our best estimate of what we think these fund balances are as of July 1. And this year, we missed that step. That was my mistake. I drew this from a very static field on the profit and loss statement, or the balance sheet rather. So this is actually the exact information that is presented in the audit that we received last fall. So before we present this document for final review and approval next month, we're going to go through and make a good faith estimate about what we think these fund balances are, obviously unaudited, but to our best guess of what we think those totals are. So we will be updating these numbers for you. As we just reported in the treasurer's report, we kind of had a balanced budget this year. We weren't really expecting it to be that way. That said, we anticipate that the numbers may in fact look a little bit the same as they are today. That said, I do believe that the liability fund will see a little bit more funding than we had there last year, because we did take some action related to that last fall. So that detail we're going to be updating. Another aspect that I wanted to share with you is on page 3 of the document. Section 5 lists a transfer to the Special Reserve Fund from the general fund, and it lists $500,000. Now, we don't really have $500,000 probably to transfer over to the Special Reserve Fund. That said, historically, we have always listed this as an option for us. If at any point during the fiscal year, if we were to receive a windfall donation, if we thought that there was a need to make such a transfer, in order for us to update the budget and appropriation ordinance, we would need to have another public hearing, which would require a 30-day notice publication. A number of procedures would need to be followed. Whether or not we endeavor to make a transfer or not, by including it in this document, it offers us the opportunity to do so if the board elects to take that action at a future date. It does not mean that we are going to take that action. It just gives us that opportunity. So I wanted to point that out to you, that there's no obligation by putting this information in here. It merely provides us the ability to take those actions. The same is also true of the subsequent item, item 6, which is the Special Reserve Fund, the capital improvements. We reference Resolution 2021-22, which is the resolution amending a plan, effectively our Special Reserve Fund plan, which for a number of years has included a lot of the capital updates that we could make for the district. Now this year, our primary strategic plan goal is for the evaluation of our space needs assessment that I'll talk about in a moment, which would set us up for the potential renovation of the first and lower level, which are included in the Special Reserve Fund plan. So we have effectively appropriated for the entirety of what we have discussed in the Special Reserve Fund plan for that project, even though we might not actually take action on that this year. We're just, again, setting us up for the opportunity to do so if we elected to do so. The second item relates to the computer network upgrade. As we discussed during our budget process this year, we are scheduled for the update and replacement of all of our desktop and laptop computer equipment this fiscal year. You'll be hearing more about that here in a moment during my director's report. I'll give you an update on that. So we're encumbering those funds as part of the appropriation. And then there's also a couple other items here if we find ourselves with an opportunity to do some of that work, either by necessity as an emergency or by plan. We're just giving ourselves the opportunity to appropriate those funds in the event that there's an opportunity to take that action. That was very verbose, but does that all make sense?
It makes sense.
Makes sense.
Good. And I
Okay.
like the clarification of the option for the transfer. Thank you.
So those were the details that I wanted to share with you all about the budget and appropriation ordinance. Do you all have any questions or comments about the document or the procedure?
Director Austin, the buffer, the 10% buffer, do we think that that still makes sense, that that number, it sounds like we've used that in the past, and we still think that is a appropriate number?
I think so. I mean, if you look at where we landed last fiscal year, we did come in, like I was anticipating, around 98% of what our budget was in terms of our expenses. There were a couple lines, as you look at the treasurer's report for this past month, you'll see that a couple of the lines did go over ever so slightly. Sometimes that happens, but nothing blew the appropriation. So I think that methodology still makes good sense. The one aberration is grants. We do appropriate a little bit more for grants in the event that we find an opportunity to apply for a grant throughout the year and were to be awarded that. That would give us the ability to expend that money if we received it. I do think that formula has worked for us, and I've used that in the past at other agencies, and it seems to serve us well. We don't want to demonstrate that we're appropriating substantially more than we think that we're going to be spending, as it may send the message that we're less responsible with our funds, but it is always wise to appropriate, as our attorney has told us in the past, just a little bit more than what we've budgeted for. And we do have a contingency line in there as well, I should point that out. Section 4 has a small contingency of about $200,000 for us in the event that we find something else that we need to take care of. Any other questions or comments on the ordinance? So the action tonight is actually the action to advance to the next stage. You're not actually approving the ordinance to take an effect for us to file with the county. It is merely to proceed with the next step, which is to take the changes that I said this evening that we're going to make with that estimated balance as of July 1, and to push that forward for presentation at the August meeting. So we will take a motion for that action tonight on the tentative ordinance.
Sounds good. Well, excellent. Thank you. Good. All good information. Thank you. Well, then I will entertain, is there a motion to approve ordinance number 2024/25-212, the annual budget and appropriation ordinance for library purposes for the fiscal year 2024-25 in tentative form? Is there a motion? Please.
I move approval of ordinance number 2024-25-212, annual budget and appropriation ordinance for library purposes for the fiscal year 2024-25 in tentative form as presented.
Thank you. Trustee Senate has motioned approval. Is there a second?
I second.
Thank you. Trustee Cox has seconded. Thank you. Secretary DiLorenzo, may we have a roll call, please?
Yes. Trustee Cox?
Yes.
Trustee DiLorenzo, yes. Trustee O'Keefe?
Yes?
Trustee Senate?
Yes.
Trustee Fishman?
Yes. Thank you. The motion has passed. Thank you. Motion has passed to approve ordinance, I'll repeat it one more time, 2024-25-212, annual budget and appropriation ordinance for library purposes for the fiscal year 2024-25 in tentative form. Excellent. Thank you. We're on now our point of our discussion items, and back to you, Director Austin. Thank you for a strategic facility plan, space needs assessment with Engbert Anderson Architects.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you. I'll just provide a brief update on our strategic facility plan project, our space needs assessment. So this is one of our strategic plan goals, as I mentioned earlier. For a number of years, we've had in our special reserve fund plan the goal to evaluate the capacity for renovation of the first and lower level of the library. And part of the first step of that process was part of our strategic planning process back in 2021-22 when we began community engagement about the community's aspirations for the library spaces. Coming out of the pandemic, how can we grow and evolve? How can we better serve the needs of the community? And we received a lot of feedback as part of that process, and that's what has moved us forward with this step to engage with our architect, Joe Huberty from Ingberg Anderson Architects, to evaluate our building as well as look at our long-range capital reserve fund plan to see what elements of the building are due for update and replacement, and how we can maximize the potential of the existing spaces to meet the needs of the community both today and for years to come. This was the third core team meeting that we had was last week, and we were joined by the first floor management staff, as well as our facilities manager, our communication and events manager, as well as Trustee Fishman and myself. And so Joe had done some analysis of the past review of data that we've collected both from the public, from our engagement with the trustees, the feedback that I collected from you all from our tours of the facility and looking at how we can best use our space, as well as the engagement that we've done with the staff, either through as part of our staff development day meeting that we had here, as well as subsequent feedback that we've been reviewing with the staff, as well as with the core team. And Joe presented us with a series of scenarios. He had done some analysis of the collections because a lot of the space that we're discussing relates to our collections. So one of the tasks that he did for us early in June was to benchmark our library collections against our community of peers, and we had selected 16 libraries that we were evaluating and comparing ourselves with. And in that process, we discussed the range of our collections, how we can better present them, what options we have for more display, looking at trending. Obviously, Joe works on a number of projects around the country. He made a presentation at the ALA conference in San Diego about a library that had an interesting testimonial regarding how it presented its collections and took some action there and how they were able to maximize their circulation with the limited space that they had for their collections, as well as overall trending that he's seeing for use of public library spaces in a time of tremendous change in this industry, as evidenced by the conversations that we had at the conference this year, or just a couple weeks ago. The future for libraries is really interesting. Around the country, we're seeing a lot of challenges at the government level for libraries. We've taken a lot of steps here in Illinois and our library as well to address freedom of information and making our collections always accessible. That said, other parts of the countries are having challenges with this and how they're going to present their collections or even how they're going to remain open to the public. So there's a lot of philosophical discussion about how libraries serve. There's also a lot of trending data coming out of the pandemic about how the public is using our spaces. Specifically, whether people are working more remotely now, they're working from home, they're not commuting to an office space, they're using the library as an office space. Families may be spending more time at the library. If a family member is working at home, the kids may come to the library and spend the entire day at the library. We're seeing that here where we have a lot of nannies that are using our space, and we're seeing in a very large number of strollers that we had never planned for that are taking up a lot of space in the building, and families are looking for places where they can spread out, as well as those who are telecommuting to their jobs or looking for a quiet place to study and read, as well as to interact with our collections, have more programming spaces, study spaces, etc. All right, so a lot of feedback that we've been both observing and looking at trending, as well as just even looking at our own statistics and recognizing that this year we had one of our strongest performing years of digital collection growth. and that is likely a trend that we're going to continue to see here today. We also are well aware that a number of publishers are discontinuing certain formats for their collections, and that we need to be proactive in how we plan our spaces that are currently occupied by those. So the big takeaway that we've had from all the conversations about the collections to date has been that for any action that we take related to the spaces in this building, we want our spaces to be flexible. The key theme is that everything just needs to be adaptable. The big takeaway that we know from our community engagement surveys and from observations from staff is that there just aren't enough spaces in Wilmette Library right now for the community to find a quiet place to sit and read, to find a place to do their tutoring, to spread out, to study. We're short on space. Our collections have also really grown, and that's an area that we've spent a good bit of time with staff and most recently with our collection team to look at the reasons why our collection has grown the way that it has. It has historically been a mark of our success, and it continues to be. That said, over the course of the last couple years, since we did our RFID project where we tagged all the items in our collection to make them more accessible during the pandemic, we've had to do more evaluation of the collection than I think we historically have done. We have a lot of space in our building for collections. We've had a lot of shelving, and our collection has grown to fill those shelves, but we've not proactively had a plan for how we want to present those collections, how we want to merchandise them, how we want to make them attractive so that they speak to our users. Over time, the collection has grown larger than I think what is, and what our architect thinks is an appropriate right size for the community that we serve. For a community of 28,000 residents, our collection of 370,000 items is a lot. Just as we benchmark against our peers, it's substantially larger than it maybe ought to be. That said, we know that our community deeply values the library's collections, and we're sensitive to that. So we're taking a measured approach to evaluating the collections currently so that we can build capacity for the potential for the renovation of these spaces so that we can make more room for the things that the patrons are valuing most these days, which are the study spaces, the more tables, the soft seating, the variety of flexible spaces that we can grow into over time. So Joe shared that information with us at this last meeting, and he gave us a couple scenarios where he was looking specifically at the budget that we have historically had in the Special Reserve Fund plan, which is copied in the packet as part of the Budget and Appropriation Ordinance. That document hasn't been updated in a few years, and the figure that we have listed in there for the renovation project of the first and lower level has, for a number of years, probably 10 years or more, has been stated as about $3 million. We haven't adjusted that number for inflation, but that is the number that we have listed in there, and Joe has taken that as gospel that that is the threshold for this project. As we mentioned at the last meeting, when Joe did his pie in the sky, hey, we're going to collect everything that everyone has given us in terms of feedback, and we're going to try to deliver all of that to you, he came back with a rough estimate of about $8 million to accomplish all of those things. So we know we can't do everything that everyone wants, but we're going to try to find the right fit and mix that's going to accomplish all of the goals. So Joe shared 3 separate scenarios with us that would try to capture the best options either for just the first floor or just the lower level or the best of what we can do for both of those floors. And the staff and Joan and I reviewed that information, and we built consensus around one of those scenarios, which was tackling the best of both the first and the lower level. And now he's going to go back to the drawing board and try to do some further finessing of that information and start putting together some additional scenarios, enhancing those kind of rough drawings that he did for us, and even create some elevations so that we can start to visualize what that may look like. And that will be the next step in our community engagement process, will be to present this information not only to you as the board for review, but also to do some engagement with the community around this information to share with you all, here's what we think we can accomplish and how we can accomplish this with the reserves that we've already established. So with no new tax dollars, just from what we've got in reserve in our special reserve fund, how might we make the best investment of these dollars to produce some results for you today? And then hopefully we can build some consensus around those discussions, do some further refinement to get that information back to the architect for further revision, and hopefully be able to take some action on that here yet this fiscal year so that we can move those plans forward. That's where we're at right now on that project. Joan, would you like to share any more information about your observations?
Well, it's a tall order to stay in a budget that, knowing now that was determined 10 years ago. A lot has changed, and a lot has changed in library concepts. And in some of my travels of going around and seeing, I like to always bring that out, but it really is instructive. Who has done what kind of updating, whether it's, as you mentioned, it's lighting, it's seating, it's tables, it's shelving. I've seen even shelving on wheels. So that's how flexible is the key. And so they could move things around. It was in a big atrium. What library was that, did I mention again? It was Helen.
Oh, Helen Plum.
Helen
Lombard.
Plum. Lombard. And so you could see that it could be a gallery, it could be music, and that to me is exciting because it really does give a lot of opportunity as libraries and what goes on in this building as things change. So I think Joe has heard us from staff, from some of our comments. It's a constant refinement, but I think we're moving in the right direction. So there's a lot of discussion about what merchandising, even though bookstores have changed and evolved, but it still brings to mind a way of looking at a books, looking at how the shelving is turned out. You need a lot of room for that. You need some flexibility. So lower shelves, tables maybe. There's just, as I'm sure from also being at ALA, the libraries of the future are not a quiet place where a lot of books are shelf after shelf. So I think he's heard us, and I think it's just going to be, again, a next steps, and keep talking and keep hearing from staff, from board, and then from the community. So just how libraries have changed. That I was here the other day, and a whole group of like 10-year-old boys walked in with parents, and they were all excited about going up to the second floor. Well, their parent shushed them, wanted them to be quiet. I feel like libraries of the future, no one needs to be that quiet, So that's where I think there's an excitement about the flexibility that we can do with our renovation. So to be continued, right? Yeah.
Any questions or comments about the process or what we've talked about so far this evening?
I'm curious as to the process of engaging with community members to get feedback and communicate planning and what that looks like. I know that's down the road, but
Hopefully not too far down the road, but yes, that is the next step in the process, and Joe's told us a little bit about what his plans are for that. So we'll do a variety of engagement. I imagine we're going to do some engagement right here in this room, hopefully with some visuals that folks can really engage with and talk about what their aspirations are. We can say what we're trying to address with these steps. Obviously, we're going to have a website now that's got a little bit more information that we can flesh out so we can truly show our work on this and talk about the finer points so that people really understand where we're going with this. So I think we're at that stage now where we can start pushing our communications more as we're going to be doing more listening and sharing out because he'll have more drawings to share. So certainly stuff that'll happen here at the library. More information on the website. I think we've also discussed trying to get out into the community and engage with parts of our community that we may not see as much recently. So I would like to try to find some satellite locations that we could host similar engagement events. Joe has also talked about potentially doing some virtual engagement, whether it's even just through surveys, which obviously we're going to want to have mechanisms to collect feedback, but also even just a virtual presentation so people don't have to physically come into a space to share with us. So a variety of ways to try to capture that information. And then obviously our public meetings are ways that the community can use either the public comment forum, or we can, use this as a mechanism for engagement as well.
In the
So.
newsletter as well, or email? Will we?
Yeah, possibly, probably not the print newsletter. There may be more information advertising what we're going to be doing in there, but I think the bandwidth and space in the newsletter should be reserved a little bit. That said, our digital communications, we've got over 14,000 email addresses, and it's a great way to get folks engaged. So when we're doing the surveys themselves, getting that information out in front of people, I think is going to be a very critical way of getting that. So, yes. But probably not as much room in the small newsletter to try to
Sure.
do all the communications there.
Plus the timing of the newsletter too
Yeah.
makes it a little cumbersome.
We do have a little bit of bandwidth in the budget for a postcard campaign if we felt that we needed to go that route. I'm not sure, but we'll see as we get closer. But there's a variety of ways that we can do engagement around this.
Because what we've done in the past is that we've had morning, we've had afternoon, evening,
Weekends.
donuts in the morning, whatever. Try to lure people in. I think that we've learned some things from doing the past engagement.
Yep.
Good question, though. Thank you. Any other questions for Director Austin? Okay. Then may we have your monthly report? We'll keep you
Okay.
on the hot seat. Keep
All
you
right.
going. Thank you.
All right. I've got a few things that I want to share, so you're probably going to get tired of hearing my voice here tonight. But I'm really excited that we've just wrapped our fiscal year on June 30th, and we're currently in the process of reviewing and compiling all the official statistical record of the prior 12 months. At next month's meeting, you're going to see the review of our Illinois Public Library Annual Report, IPLAR. That's the official compilation of all the data, so I'm not going to have a lot of analysis about the past 12 months for you this evening, but I will tell you specifically about what we saw in June and give you some kind of broad statements with some highlights. So in June, we welcomed 189 new patrons, and we had over 22,000 visitors, averaging about 733 users each day last month. So one of the busiest days, or months rather, of the fiscal year was June. We had our fourth highest circulation of the fiscal year in June, with almost 57,000 physical items circulating, which was great. On the other hand, our overdrive circulation had our most modest digital circulation since last fall, with just over 16,000 checkouts. We've been seeing exponential growth in that, and that's still nothing to sneeze at. That's still a pretty significant amount, but it is a little bit off the trend that we've been seeing the last several months. We do have a full fiscal year's worth of digital usage statistics in my report, and that reflects robust engagement as well as rigorous reflection on the return on investment of those resources. As you know, our digital and maker services manager, Lauren Kelly, has been doing a fantastic job this past year maintaining and evaluating those statistics, which has helped us to make recommendations for the renewals for this fiscal year's digital purchases. So they've appended additional insights in their monthly report with their highlights. If you've got any questions, let me know. Speaking of serials management, our technical services assistant, Emma Standard, has also created a spreadsheet to help us track our newspaper renewals. Our newspaper subscriptions are direct orders, and they renew multiple times each year, so this tool is going to help us track that just as well as Lauren's report has helped us keep track of the digital renewals. She's also been working closely with Adult Services Manager Kathleen Blair in her evaluation and renewal of our print periodical subscriptions, and we've been in the process of doing all of those selections here early in July, and you'll see the invoices and the first round of expenses for that in next month's Treasurer's Report. Also in tech services, our acquisitions assistant, Megan Brown, has been the project leader on the standardization of our call numbers throughout the collection. And this month, she's been replacing spine labels on a number of items and updating item records in Polaris, particularly working with our cataloging librarian, Carly Staus, in updating over 500 fiction hot pick items and over 800 book club titles. So we're trying to make things look more uniform, and I was explaining a little bit of that in the report. And if you've got questions about that, I'm happy to take that. We're also working on reclassifying elements of the collection, including the past project that we worked on with Megan Noon and the biographies. So those labels are being updated there as well. Where all this is about trying to promote the findability and accessibility of the collections, which is going to be a hallmark of the project that we're going to work on with moving collections around. Over the past couple months, and as I've alluded to here earlier this evening, Tech Services has also been busy providing collection data to managers and selectors in anticipation of that planned and coordinated effort to right-size the collection ahead of this possible renovation. We met last week with our selection team and talked about our priorities and how we're going to try to get to these goals. On the lower level of the library right now, for example, you'll notice in the 900s room that we've done a tremendous amount of shifting to try to accommodate these moves in the collection that we're working on. We're back shifting parts of the nonfiction collection here on the south side of the building. And eventually we'll start to see the collections that are in the 900s room vacate that space, and that will kind of become the free space, if you will, where we can begin staging elements of the renovation project and help make the 900s, the histories collection, more accessible on the lower level and more visible. So we know that that's one of the spaces that we're going to need to open up, and we're building capacity for that right now. So the selection team is already at work, and it's not just the adult services team. The youth services staff are also evaluating their collections and have goals to right-size their collections to help drive the promotion of their collections as well. Our ILL coordinator is helping us to promote a new service that we've just started here this month. She's completed 3 hours of training and produced materials for her department in support of our participation in the statewide interlibrary loan service Find More Illinois. So very shortly, if you search in the Polaris catalog for an item that Wilmette Library doesn't have, patrons will be presented then in the search results with the option to search the Find More Illinois catalog, whereupon you can then place a hold as a patron directly in that system and have those items sent right here to Wilmette Library. It's a really convenient resource, and we're really excited to participate in this. The Cooperative Computer System CCS Consortium is largely responsible for our participation in this statewide initiative. So we're one of the systems that's kind of leading the effort to try to expand access to collections across the state. We're really excited to participate in this process, and apparently we're already sending items out across the state to other libraries that don't have the materials that we do. So it's a reciprocal service, and we're really excited to be participating in that process. Again, I think this all relates back to our collection and how well we're able to serve our immediate community with the collections that we have on our shelves here, as well as leveraging the resources that we have through our network, through interlibrary loan, to provide access to our own patrons to collections elsewhere. Patrons can still also use the OCLC First Search collections as well, but this is a more immediate and patron-initiated method to get those items. Circulation staff is also going to be representing the library through some outreach. We're going to resume our participation at the Saturday French Market beginning this weekend on the 20th. So the Community Engagement Committee is going to be meeting this Thursday and talk about their priorities for their outreach. There'll be representatives from the circulation staff. Our circulation manager, Matthew Hoffman, will be there and help register folks for library cards and do promotion of our summer reading clubs and so on. So we're excited to have that engagement returning. That committee is also working on some other outreach events that we're going to be participating in, including the Food Truck Mondays in Kenilworth that we've been doing there the last couple of years. Also from the circulation report, last September, you may recall that we approved a procedure for patrons to authorize another registered card holder to pick up their holds materials for them. And since the adoption of that service at the end of the fiscal year, we have over 150 patrons who are participating in that. So we're excited that that's a convenience for those folks. From the public service side of things, in programming, a really big month obviously for us in June as we kicked off our busy season of summer reading clubs. We had 2 major events, including our very first adult and teen kickoff concert with the Jolly Ringwalds. They had high energy 80s cover hits that brought adults and families to their feet on the library lawn. We had 150 people attend during that hour, and some of them just joined us spontaneously as they overheard the fun music in the neighborhood. In addition to enjoying the upbeat tunes, we also had staff on hand to promote the summer reading clubs and give folks an opportunity to have a treat from Kona Ice, and all of this was presented from the generous support of the Friends of the Wilmette Public Library. Thank you, friends. We also, the following week, had a program for the youth as well. The structure of our summer reading clubs is very accessible and inviting, and I encourage all of you to participate if you haven't already begun to track your reading. Adults and teens are invited to read any 4 books that appeal to them, and by doing so, you can earn a prize of your choosing. We've already had 47 patrons complete their reading goals in June. 27 came in person, and 20 participated online. And they've all expressed excitement over the diverse and well-curated selection of titles that we've provided to them. Also in June is a turning point for our student services. As we talked about at our last meeting, we had a lot of engagement at the end of the year from our teens who use the library as a study space. And our teen librarian, Krista Hutley, coordinated an impressive 18 programs, 18 programs,
Thank you.
including ones that were developed in partnership with staff from DMS as well as youth services. And we had a big pizza study night for the new Trier students who were studying for exams. And we did the same for Loyola back in May, and we had 60 students that came and enjoyed pizza and snacks. So that's been a tradition for us during both of the busy final seasons, and we're thrilled that we were able to provide that service again. Over in youth services, we're doing the same with our summer reading club booth up and running, and it's been newly decorated for our theme of Read, Renew, Repeat. And our team of teen volunteers and summer reading club assistants are staffing the booth June through August and are engaging with kids about their favorite books. And we're also doing our distribution of prizes there and taking photos for the Gallery of Readers wall. We hosted several engagement sessions with our school engagement librarian, Etty Berlin. She's gone out to a number of local schools, as we talked about last month, to promote the program. And we're doing a lot of partnership with, obviously, teen services and digital maker services with our maker librarian, Janet Peel. In total, youth services hosted 49 events in June that were attended by nearly 2,000 patrons. And in terms of the visits, we did 20 visits in the community in June for a total attendance of 2,100 people. So great engagement with that team. Over to DMS, in the studio in June, we had 621 reference interactions in the space, including 73 tours of the studio. And that is a dramatic, almost double increase from where we were in May. So the studio is definitely taking off and has been very busy all afternoon and throughout the weekends, and our summer is in full swing there. Lauren reports that there are frequently 3 to 5 separate groups working in the space simultaneously on projects. So at any point in the afternoon, come by and take a peek, and you're going to see a lot of really cool projects going on. And they've included a lot of really cool stories and testimonials in their report this month. I encourage you to take a look at that. The studio's definitely a hit. And then just a couple other things I wanted to share with you briefly. The IT team is working on advancing 3 major projects this month, including a new ticketing system and asset management tool that are going to be used by both the IT and facilities departments. Effectively, what this is going to allow us to do is if anyone has a problem that they want to report, like for example this evening we've got a door that's not closing down here appropriately, it would be very easy for the staff to then just go into this ticketing system, which will then allow staff to keep track of the request to do the service. It will send them updates, reminders. They'll have the ability to track how they solved the problem, and then they'll effectively have a database that will show how they've resolved these things. So if they have an issue like that again in the future, they'll have a repository of that info that they can refer back to. So we're really excited about that. And obviously the same for IT. We're also working on an organization-wide scheduling tool that will help all of our staff with their range of concurrent commitments. We've got a range of programs that we're managing, desk shifts, off-site events, person in charge activity, meeting commitments, and so on. Our scheduling tool is going to help us know where all of our teams are at any given time and help us to better manage through information where we're allocating all of our human resources. So we're really excited about launching this new scheduling tool here really soon. And then obviously the third project I mentioned earlier is we're going to be working on updating and replacing our computer systems project this fall, and we hope to have a proposal that we can share with you all next month about how we're going to address that. In the facilities report, this is the last thing I'll mention, we had two big projects that Hill Mechanical came to the rescue for this month. We finally were able to replace the heat exchanger. You've seen that thing updated multiple times in my report over the course of the last few months. Marcos wrote a great report about how Hill was able to repair and replace that equipment for us at a substantial cost savings to us. They didn't try to upsell us on anything. They really value us as a partner and want to keep our contract, and they've done a great job servicing us, which gave us confidence when our sump pumps failed recently. Late in June, right ahead of a big rainstorm, both of our primary sump pumps in the lowest part of the building failed. And so we knew who to call, and they were able to come out right away and installed a temporary solution for us while they helped us to provision the ultimate solution. We knew that we were ultimately going to have to replace these sump pumps at some point. Joe had identified them as needing replacement in 2027. Sometimes those things need to be replaced before we planned them to. But one of the things that I was talking about with Trustee Cox actually earlier today is that sometimes our capital reserve study plan that we did back in 2020 will identify that there are certain projects that we should look at in certain fiscal years to plan for expenses out of the special reserve fund. This would be one of those such projects that we would want to proactively work on, but this year, obviously, we're going to have to do it more reactively. But as we're looking at that renovation of the first and lower level, I've also asked Joe to go through that tool and see what things are eligible for replacement here, both currently and for the next couple years, to see if there's any skilled trades that might be engaged on this renovation project, that there might be an opportunity for us to actualize some cost savings by taking care of those projects as part of the renovation project. So we're going to look at those things too and evaluate that. And then obviously the final thing I wanted to mention is that I did attend the American Library Association annual conference in San Diego with two of my peers. So business librarian John Amundsen attended from Adult Services, as well as our school engagement librarian Etty Berland. Both of them have roles in ALA and participated in a number of conferences related to their service to the association. It was an awesome conference. All right, so that's my long-winded report. Thanks for sitting through all of that. We're very proud of everything that our team is doing right now. Any questions or comments about the content of my report?
I just had one question
Yeah.
about the statewide interlibrary loan. What type of libraries are in that? Is that just public libraries, or are there more than that?
It's broad right now. So we're trying to get more participation, and it was for CCS. So Rails is coordinating the effort. To get CCS in was really a crucial and strategic step for Rails to get our consortium of 30 libraries in there, because we have some of the strongest collections in the state and some of the deepest. So getting these public libraries engaged was a crucial step to entice other agencies to join, including school and academic libraries. So there are some school, academic, and special libraries that are members, and a number of rural libraries that we're going to be servicing downstate. But at this time, there's still not full statewide participation. We're trying to get more systems and definitely trying to get the more academic institutions involved. So over time it will grow. It's still a small group right now, But yeah, it's growing. Multi-type.
I just have a comment. I attended the adult summer reading club program on a Thursday night, which was lots of fun. And right, people were dancing, kids were there. It was just great. So really nice community program. And I think it was the next night, actually, that was the youth services.
It was the next night.
So not the next week, but it was, the weather was good, and I didn't go to that, but that was, the adult was really fun. So that was great. Thank you. I just had a note, Trustee Summer shared with me about programs that were off, something she attended yesterday. I attended the Taylor Swift Lyrics Zoom last night through the library. I was so tickled with the program. She didn't say that. Actually, I was pleased with the program and how prepared the presenter was. It was an excellent event. I don't know how many attended, but we're hip. We're out there. So all good. And I do have a question. When you mentioned going to the farmer's market or the French market, whatever happened to Professor Plum?
We do still have a book bike.
Okay, as in maybe thank you for sharing.
Yeah.
That it's a book bike. It's really cool. I've never
It is
driven
really
it,
cool.
but I know other trustees in the past have taken their turn at that.
Yep.
Is it kind of tucked away somewhere?
It's currently tucked away. It's taken a little bit of a break. We'll get that back out there eventually. This season, the weather hasn't really cooperated with us. It's been kind of hot and muggy and a little rainy around the time that we've wanted to do some engagement. We'll tap into it a little bit more here in the future. It is a bit of a beast to try to
It looks
schlep that thing from one end of
cumbersome,
town to the
yes,
other.
but it's cute.
But it is really fun. It's fun to ride. We'll find opportunities to bring it out a
Good.
little bit more. Yeah.
Good.
We still have Professor Plum.
Excellent, okay, tucked away, all safe. You mentioned the studio tours. Are those drop-in tours, or are those prearranged?
They're drop-in, right? Yeah.
We have Linnea,
I'm looking at
right,
Linnea.
right. Not
Yeah.
arranged.
Yeah.
Great, okay.
Yep. So
Good,
we
thank
encourage,
you.
we encourage
That's
folks who are
wonderful.
curious and walk past the window to pop in and see the range of things that are available.
Got it. Good, good. And one last thing, I did wander over to the 900s, and yes, it's looking a little sparse, but there's good signage. So people, if they're looking for something, it directs them to where they can go. So
Yep.
I appreciate that.
We'll keep the signage going. Yep. And a lot of things are going to be in flux, so that'll keep things interesting. If you're looking for your collection, you're trying to find your thing, you might find something else fun in the process.
Great, great. That's all
I had
good.
a question, Director Austin, in the report, the digital downloads on Hoopla look like they're exponentially increasing every month. And to what do you attribute that? And I'm hoping we have an unlimited license that allows.
We don't have an unlimited license with Hoopla. Hoopla is a pay-per-circulation service.
Oh, it is.
So that when we really succeed with Hoopla, it means we kind of need to balance that budget.
Sure.
It may mean that we spend a little bit less on overdrive. So we kind of have to look throughout the year how we manage that. Hoopla is, we're going to learn more about this fall, but Hoopla is launching a consortium option here that's going to help us to balance those expenses, because not every library can have a pay-to-play model like we do right now with Hoopla. So there may be some relief coming to that growth. Hoopla has a lot of really cool titles. Do any of you use Hoopla at all?
I have a little, yeah.
Yeah. So there's audiobooks in there, TV series. There's a whole range of things. There's music. So it provides a range of media options, and I think the more that people explore it and check it out, they're also doing some incentives to try to get people to participate more, where they'll give you kind of like a bonus borrow, because it is embargoed a little bit. I think you get 10 circs a month. But on some things, like if you're binge watching a TV series or whatnot, they'll give you bonus borrows on that, so you don't have to use up all your credits on that. And that's sort of how we manage the expenses, but as more people get involved, more people want to use it, it does kind of take off. So we're evaluating that. We haven't really done a lot more to promote it at this time. I think it's just word of mouth that's kind of taken off with that. So check it out.
Good. Canopy works the same way, doesn't it, as so many, I think is it 10 views per
Right.
month?
And they too are experimenting with some bonus borrows as well, and they have a youth portal now, where the credits, I think, I forget how they balance those, but you can use more youth materials.
Great.
Canopy's awesome. It's my favorite of our digital resources. Highly recommend it. If you like the Criterion Collection films, you'll find a lot of stuff like that there. All right, anyway.
Thank you. Good. Moving along, thank you. Any committee reports? Trustee Nealon is not here to comment, but anything that you would?
I don't
You mentioned
have anything
ALA,
new to
so
share.
nothing
Yeah.
with ILA or rails.
No.
Okay. And, all right, thank you. Any new business? Thank you. All right. Well, it is currently 7:30, and I will move that the board adjourn this meeting and a voice vote. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Thank you. We are now adjourned at 7:30. Thank you very much.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.